5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The only thing we have to fear is spirit.
Mile 18.
This is Endurance Nation.
95% of endurance athletes are wasting their time and money trying to solve race day problems with more training. And guess what? You're probably one of them. Here inside Endurance Nation, we've cracked the code on race day performance, and we're on a mission to make ordinary athletes into expert racers. Our revolutionary approach to race execution, the 4 keys, is only part of our ecosystem. Race execution is baked into our entire season trajectory, from homework that our athletes do, to key training sessions, to race day support, to debriefs, and content that actually supports you becoming a smarter and stronger athlete. If you're interested in upping your intellectual game and making sure that you're just as mentally tough as you are physically strong, go to endurancenation.us. You'll find resources on that page and an opportunity to sign up for our newsletter, including free courses that will teach you some of our frameworks and start you on the path to becoming a better athlete. If it's got a finish line, we're ready to help you get there. Find us at endurancenation.us.
5 seconds, athletes. Here we go.
Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with another post-race, although I don't think we can call it that, podcast. This time with once again, with special guest John Withrow, who found yet another ridiculous event to put himself into, another crazy situation to dig yourself out of. I saw pictures on Instagram, but I don't think it does it justice. So, John, welcome back. And dear God, tell us about this race you just did.
Well, thanks for that intro. First of all, I'll just start out by saying I like to do hard things. And this definitely was one of those. But this was a different kind of hard than I'm used to doing. So we can get into the details and what that means relative compared to, say, Ironman or compared to Leadville. Very different. Very different experience. So,
well, I remember a little earlier than this time last year, you were lamenting like, hey, listen, I've got these life events happening and I can't do my normal schedule next year. Like, what am I going to do? And you were sort of morose about this. And then I fast forward a year and I see this pop up on my radar. Like, he just took all the events of the year and put them into a single day and did them all at once. A stroke of genius, or just crazy suicidal intent. We'll find out.
Yeah. So the background on that is I've done Leadville the last 3 years, but our oldest is going to went to college this year. And my wife was basically like, Jess, she was like, so we're taking JT to school in August. Leadville's in August. And we're not planning when you take our first son to college for the first time around your stupid race. So no Leadville this year. So I was like, So I signed up for the Margie Gessick, and that was literally the one race that she said I was never allowed to do. So that created a little bit of friction because I think she thought I was going to die or whatever. Maybe it was the 70% DNF rate or all of the, rumors about people crashing out and breaking their brains and their bikes and whatever else. So turns out I'm invincible. So I survived.
There was like
telling her that she doesn't believe me.
All right, option A, lucky. Option B, strategic. Option didn't even know there was an E. Like, I'm invincible.
Yeah, there you go.
Amazing, amazing. All right.
So where do you want me to start?
Yeah, let's start. Well, first of all, so thanks for the context. So for the average listener at home, new to the podcast or new to Team Endurance Nation, John has consistently pushed the limits of what he's physically capable of, A, and then B, also just what general humans attempting athletic endeavors are capable of doing. Not like go climb to base camp or something outrageous, but take ordinary activities and make them very difficult, and then see if you can make it. And so it's like a great bellwether for the team, I think, because John is consistently out the front, and back here, everybody's like, "Oh man, that might not be so bad. Maybe I could do half of that. What do you guys think?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, half sounds about right. Like, let's go." And we're like, great. So we make it a little bit further. So you've been a bit of a trailblazer, for which I am grateful. But yeah, I think I'd like to know a little more, having survived Leadville, the training and realizing how hard it was, and then having been on mountain bikes with you up in your home state, Minnesota. Margie Gessick sounds like that, but all the degrees of difficulty thrown in, like darkness, weather, technical course, nutrition planning, etc. So, I mean, I just saw your bar tape where you had, as context to everyone, and I'll put the pictures in the podcast, where you had all the milestones like written out, and your bar tape wasn't, I mean, your bars weren't almost wide enough to fit all the things you needed to fit on them. So, yeah, give us the backstop.
The background of the race, people that don't know, Margie Gesick is in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and it's known as one of the hardest mountain bike races in the country, if not the world. It's a single day event. It's got a 25-hour cutoff time. It's only 110 miles, which I say that like jokingly because Leadville is 105 miles. So you think it's kind of the same context, but it took me 20 hours. Leadville took me 10 hours, almost on. It was almost exactly twice as long. And so Leadville, altitude is an issue, and you have lots of climbing, but lots of fast descents. You have some paved roads, lots of trails, not a whole lot of single track. Margie is almost completely gnarly single track. There's lots of beautiful trails in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and they purposely avoid all of them and just take you on the nastiest, gnarliest, most unfun things that there are. So imagine 110 miles of constant roots. You're constantly banging on your roots and little rocks the whole time. Steep ups, steep downs, sandy, weird terrain, drops, rocks, rock gardens. I mean, I've never imagined riding rock gardens for an hour straight. Like, I'm used to a 50-foot long section that you kind of balance your way across, but this was just like constant battle with stuff like that. So one thing that I will say is I went into the race with the right mindset. And in some ways I think, oh yeah, that's what it looked like for 20 hours straight. So if you can imagine just riding stuff like that the whole entire time, you can never get flow, you can never get speed, you can never find a groove. You're constantly, I think I was on and off my bike 1,000 times in the day.
Oh God.
And so Matt did the race also. He signed up for Matt Limbert for the duathlon. And I signed up for the full, there's a whole bunch of different courses, but there's a 50 mile, there's a 100 mile. The duathlon, you ride the first 65 and then you run the last 45. The buckle time is 12 hours. So at Leadville, the buckle's 12 hours, the big buckle's 9 hours. And I knew if I rode hard, I was well within my capabilities of getting that little buckle. And there's kind of like a distant stretch, maybe 5 years from now when I'm retired and I'm riding my bike all the time, the big buckle is on the verge of possible. For Margie, that's never a possibility. It's impossible for me. I don't even know how people can do it. Like, it blows my brain. It's like, imagine, marathoners, 4 hours is a pretty good Ironman marathon. This would be like running a 205 Ironman marathon in my brain. It's like, yeah, that's not possible. And I think there's about 10 people per year that buckle out of the 1,400 that were in the race, or 500 or 600 that were in the 100 miler. So in some ways that took a lot of the pressure off of me because I didn't have to ride fast, because I knew it was impossible. No matter how well I did at the edge of my ability, as fast as I can the whole entire time, I was never getting a buckle. So for me, there's a 70% DNF rate on this race. So most people don't finish it. For me, it was about, let me be stable, patience, discipline. Let me just go long. So if I'm doing Ironman at a 70% kind of intensity factor, and that's probably about where I do Leadville as well, with the altitude and just a little screwy, but let's just pretend it's around there. I was probably at like 55% IF or so for this race. And so it was really about survival. A lot of my training was going really long, but not fast. Positional fitness, your hands, your low back, your everything. Matt took a different approach. And he's not on here to defend himself, but he kind of thought, well, he's not quite as technical of a mountain bike rider as I am. And that buckle's impossible, but the buckle for the duathlon is 22 hours. He's like, well, if I can get the mile 65 in 9 hours, I just need to average 20-minute miles and I can get that buckle. Still has a 25-hour cutoff, but he was racing and I was trying to do an adventure day. And so Matt, I think, pushed the first on the bike a lot longer. And then you realize at the end, this isn't going to work because I can't even run. I can't keep 20 minutes per mile because you're just up these hills and down them and up them. And it's just, you lose so much time running versus riding. And then he eventually got to the math where he wasn't even going to get to the 25-hour cutoff and then pull the plug. So mine was different. I was like the tortoise that just keeps moving. I was 10 hours to that cutoff period, or to the park where he got off his bike and started running. So I was an hour behind him, and then I passed him within a couple hours, and then he was like blown up and exploded. So I don't know if you want to get to my race. My low point in my race was actually 4 hours in.
How long did the whole race take you?
20 hours.
Have you said that yet? 20 hours. Okay,
and
so you hit
the race starts. So there's a big field. You put your bikes in the field, and you start in the race, and they play the national anthem on electric guitar, and then you have to run a half-mile loop on this grass loop. And it's their way to kind of spread out the field. And it's like, I'm going to be riding my bike for 20 hours. I'm not going to be running fast. So I chose to not run and just kind of fast walk and be in the back of that crowd. And I'm like, well, if this costs me 4 minutes, I'm not going to, I'm not going to trash my legs by trying to sprint a half a mile to get on my bike first. Now that probably cost me 10 or 15 minutes just being stuck behind slow people on technical things, but in the grand scheme of my day, I don't think it make or break my day.
Okay.
Or Matt ran that and then was trying to get up there with the fast guys.
Okay.
And so I just had a different approach. And I got to, I kind of took my time. I fast walked and power walked and got to my bike, and I changed. I had sneakers on. I put my bike shoes on, and then I was off for my day. Mm-hmm. The thing I didn't expect was how hard it was to actually eat anything. So you remember in Leadville, you timed, I'm in this smooth section. I can eat. Right. I'm going to eat here. I'm going to eat there. I'm going to eat there. Well, the only smooth part was the first kind of 4 to 5 miles. You're on the kind of a grass double track, and but I started a race with a full belly, full breakfast, full bottle in my stomach. And so in the first half hour or an hour, I never need to eat anything. Mm-hmm. Well, the first main section took me about 2 hours. I was averaging about 9 miles per hour, which sounds reasonable. I ended up at 5.7 miles per hour for the whole day. So it gets worse later. But after you're a half hour in, there was never a single time where I could take my hands off the bars to eat. So you're either on bumpy rocks or bumpy routes, or you're pushing your bike up a hill, or you're riding down something that's super technical. And like, we have such a good Ironman mentality. It's like, I need to be disciplined. I need to eat at the schedule. And it's like, my half hour would beep on my bike, and I was like, okay, I can't do anything here. I have to keep riding. And then I was about 4 miles from the first checkpoint where I was meeting my crew. I had one guy that was crewing for me, Joe Wilcox. He was awesome. And I'm like, whoa, I finally got to a little spot where I can eat. I'm like, but I'm only a couple miles from my checkpoint. I might as well wait till I get there. And then that couple miles took a half hour. And it's like, what I do? So I rolled into that checkpoint. I had 0 water from my Camelback. I had like an inch of drinking from my bottle, and I hadn't eaten anything. So I took my leg over the bar. I ate a bar. I ate like a scratch bar. We swapped bottles, even though I had barely drank anything, and I was off again. And then when I got a couple miles from the next checkpoint, I was like, oh man, I'm starting to get hungry, but I'm almost to where Joe's going to be. I'm not going to waste my time stopping to eat. I'm just going to wait till I get to him. And then that turned into a half hour. And when I came into that, so I'd gone the first 4 hours with just a single scratch bar and nothing else. And that's not the way you want to start a 20-hour day with no fuel.
I can't even start a regular day like that, like without that kind of fuel. Okay.
No, this was hard riding too. So I was, I was about 20 miles in. No, I was 35 miles in or something at that point. It's 4 hours worth. I was probably still averaging high 8 miles per hour, 8.5 or so. And I rolled in, and he was there, and he had the chair, and he had his food laid out. And I just like took all the food on the chair, and I just wiped it onto the floor, onto the ground. And I just sat down in the chair, and I was like, I haven't had any calories. And he smacked me, and he's like, you idiot. This is a long day. You need to eat. So
people have to see the two of you together to know what that looks like. I wish I could have that.
Oh yeah, you know Joe. Right. You know Joe from.
Oh yeah.
And so he was like, "All right, you're so stupid. You have to eat something." So I had a Coke, which I never go to Coke until late in the day. I had a can of Coke. I had like a half dozen Oreos. I ate a couple bars. I guzzled the half of my bottle, and I kind of just like put on a fuel, and I think I was there for 5 minutes, which I kind of wanted to hurry, but I kind of didn't care because I knew it was a long day. And I'm like, if I spend an hour at aid throughout the whole day, no big deal. Where usually I'm just trying to get it out as quick as I can.
Right.
So he sent me on my way, and he's like, all right, you have to get off your bike every half hour, 45 minutes, and you have to eat something. And I had live track on my Garmin. So I had a bunch of people texting me and a bunch of people sending me messages through Garmin. And so all of the group that was following me started texting me like a half hour in. They're like, you have to eat, you have to eat. I was getting all these messages that I have to eat. And so I literally stopped, took my leg off my bars, took a bar out, and I ate it. And I'm like, oh, this isn't so hard. It cost me literally 15 seconds and I'm getting fuel in. And then that's where the magic happened, because this race, there's no aid stations in the whole race. You have to collect tokens on the way. There were a bunch of these like fake checkpoints with no tokens in them that just frustrated you. I forgot to tell you, the whole point of this race is to frustrate you. So they know you're not going to go fast. Anything that's flowy, they avoid. There's a nice downhill trail that was on the course. We did it uphill, so you have to like walk past all these cool jumps and be like, oh, I wish you were doing this the other direction because this would be a lot of fun. But instead, I'm pushing my bike up this stupid hill. But I knew I was going to get on and off my bike a lot. I knew there was going to be rocks. I knew there's going to be roots. I knew there were going to be fake checkpoints. And their whole point is to just make you quit. And every time I got one of those things that would normally frustrate a normal human being, it just fueled me. I'm like, oh, this is their test. I'm passing. Here's their test. I'm passing. And it just kept it kept fueling me. But because there's no aid stations, the local community comes out in droves and they call them trail angels. The people just show up places and they put up a tent and they offer you things. So I was like a half hour before one of my checkpoints, and I came by this dirt road, and there was a white pop-up tent thing, and they had a grill there, and there were a couple people stopped. So I stopped. I'm like, well, what's going on here? And they're like, you want a hot dog? I was like, yes, I do. I had a hot dog with sauerkraut and 2 pickles. That's what I had for my like break there. It was awesome. And so it was like, all right, that got me moving. I rolled into the next, probably a half hour later, and there was a little tiny, parking lot where the single track just goes across. You know, you could park like 3 cars at a single track. Okay. And there was a lady, like this angel, a trail angel, sitting behind her truck, and she had a little folding table set up. Then she had these blueberry cake donuts, old-fashioned cake donuts with icing on them. And I was like, I stopped, got off my bike, and she had a cutting board, and she was cutting up slices of orange. So I had a blueberry sugar frosted cake donut and a half of an orange, which in any other part of the world or any other time in my life, those would be the 2 most disgusting things to eat together at the same time. And it was like awesome. Right. So I rolled into the, I keep having people texting me dumb things. It's popping up on my Garmin, like just weird motivating things and funny things. And it was just like kept fueling me. So I got into the park at mile 65 where I'm 10 hours in now. After that 4-hour low point, as I was eating all of this stuff I found on the, anytime I saw anybody, I just ate it. I started to get better and stronger, and I was doing fine. And I roll into the park where Joe was, and I sat down on the chair, and I told him about the delicious hot dog, with sauerkraut on it that I had. And there was a guy walking by in the park, and he had cheeseburgers cut in half on a plate. He's like, you want a cheeseburger? It was like half cooked, fatty cheeseburger. I was like, yes, I do. Ate that cheeseburger. It was so glorious. Where it's funny, and you haven't interrupted me, but for those that don't know, I've done 11 Ironmans, and for me, I'm like methodical, robotic about what I eat. I have my Infinite, and I have a bar at every checkpoint, and I have it all mapped out, and it's exactly by the science. To think of eating half raw cheeseburger and a hot dog with sauerkraut, and I had a soft taco at one time. It was just the most random things, but I was just craving fat and fuel. I probably ate, I think I drank 5 Cokes and 2 bottles of ginger ale and a bunch of cookies. And some people have candy on the side of the road, or they're handing out bananas. So it was actually kind of interesting, and it worked great for me. No, everything was fine.
Wow.
So,
oh my God.
I don't know if you want to stop or redirect me a different way, but I'm now sitting at mile 65 and I'm 10 hours into the race. and
Okay,
I'm feeling
miles.
great.
And I feel, first of all, I love that the low point happened at hour 4, which in the context of an Ironman would be like mile 10 of your bike. You're like, this is the worst part of my day. And for anyone who knows, it's like hitting the wall in a marathon at like mile 5. Like, to be that low and to bounce out of it, like, I mean, I know you're internally very strong and resilient, but I've got to believe, just let's gut check real fast on the people around you. Like, you're feeling good, sort of 10 hours in, but like, what has happened to the overall field that was once crowded? What's going on?
Yeah, I'll get to that. But a lot of people, they only made it as far as that park at mile 65. There's like death and destruction on the course. A lot of the downhill stuff, it wasn't like downhill, you think big jumps and downhill. It was just rollers, sandy trail with a bunch of rocks in it. And so you couldn't ride it at a medium, but you would have been a disaster on this course, Patrick. Like, you either had to walk down it or you had to bomb it, and there's no in between. And I kind of like the bombing it part. So people were afraid by that point. You saw people that were like, faces looked like death. You saw people some people looked good, but most people looked bad and miserable. And every time I saw somebody miserable, it made me smile. I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing better than that guy. And it was fun.
Okay. Wow. I got to, I was just on your Instagram, which is why I wasn't interrupting you, looking at some of the pictures. Yeah, that sand just looks like it just wants to eat you up.
Oh yeah, the
just
one
go
point
right over your bars.
so this is again to their point of making everything miserable. They put you on the worst single track that they have in the area. And there were some roads that you were on. There was one section I'm like, oh, we get a dirt road. This is going to be a fast section. This is great. And you go down it, and all of a sudden it was like 9 inches deep of sand. It was like the beach. And you kind of like sliding down this hill. It's hard to go straight on sand. And like, okay, a bunch of people are walking their bikes down the hill. I'm like, oh, I'm awesome. I can ride this. I'm like riding down the hill super fast. My bike's sliding all around. You make the turn, and it's like a third of a mile back up a hill in 6-inch deep sand. It's like, well, I can't ride that. They're pushing your bike and your shoes are filling up with sand and there's no way to get around it. And you're just like walking on this like deep sand. I'm like, okay, they're just trying to frustrate me. I can do this. Just keep pushing my bike and just keep walking. So there's a lot of stuff like that.
For folks listening, I'll put the pictures in the post and everything, but that's just, I mean, that sketches me out. I can handle sand, but that's wild.
Yeah,
what tires were you running? Yeah, tell us real fast. What were you running for tires? Like, would you decide to go in battle?
I went to Forecasters, the Forecaster version 2s, which is kind of like a trail tire. It's almost an enduro. It's kind of a trail tire. It's not an enduro tire, but it's beefier. It's got a lot more tread. It doesn't have great rolling resistance, but there's nowhere you need a rolling resistance. Matt actually recommended that because I usually ride. I race on Recon races and they don't have much tread. And he's like, as many times as you have to climb and you need traction, that rolling resistance doesn't matter. You'd better have traction. So I went with that. And I was on my Rebel Ranger, which is a downcountry bike, 115 rear, 120 front, which was the perfect bike for this because it's super comfortable. It climbs well and it can handle the bigger stuff if I need it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good.
Things are going good. They get worse, but
that's what we're here for.
So I leave. It's like 10 hours in when I get to the park, 65, so I'm 6.5 miles per hour by the time I get to the park. So it dramatically slowed down. And it's because it's not because I slowed down. It's just because I was walking so much more, pushing up, pushing down, pushing through sand, pushing, I'm pretty good on a mountain bike and there's just things I just couldn't ride. So I leave the park and I'm feeling good. And I had my lights attached. I had a big light on the front. I had one on my helmet and I'm going and I didn't need them yet. I had a couple sets of lights and I thought I'd be fine. And so it was about 7:30. The whole time you're under cover. The weather you mentioned weather. Weather was perfect the whole day. So no complaints about that. It was the low of 60, high of like 78. And it was gorgeous. It was dry. I think they got a little sprinkle somewhere where I wasn't when it rained. It was perfect conditions for a race. So no complaints about that. Wow. When it got dark, just before it got dark, I saw Joe again at one of my checkpoints. And I literally popped a wheelie when I saw him. I was like bunny hopping my bike, just screwing around. He was like filming me. And I was like, I was flying high. I felt great. Then when it got dark, it was even better because I I've ridden my bike a lot in the dark and prep for this. So I put my lights on. I could see really well. It relaxes me, and everybody else is freaked out, and I was just started to have fun. So I got these mental boosts. Passing people, I started riding more of the uphills that I was walking earlier on purpose. I started to try to ride, which was going well.
Okay.
I started passing a lot more people. And I was just picking people off. If I saw their light up ahead, I would eventually catch them and I would pass them. I don't think after that first time I left that park, besides something I'll talk about in a minute, I don't know that a single person passed me while riding for the last 10 hours that I was on a bike, which was also fueling for me. And so I was supposed to be at the park at mile 85. And I passed mile 85 and I'm still riding, and mile 86 and I'm still riding, and mile 87 and I'm still riding. And it's like this stupid up stuff and stupid down and stupid up. And it's like you're constantly on your bike, constantly. And once we got to the dark, most people around me, the really fast guys probably rode all this stuff, but the people that where I was, nobody was riding the downhills anymore.
Yeah.
And I rode everything downhill at that point. And so every time I passed somebody, it fueled me, and I kept going. And so again, I was supposed to be at the park at 85, not there at 86, not there at 87, 88. I'm down this gnarly single tracks, one of the steeper downhills, really sandy, big rocks. I both my brakes locked up, and I'm sliding between these rocks, and I hear this loud pop near my rear wheel, and I was like, "Oh crap, what just happened?" And then my brakes gone. I was like, "Oh." So it was mile 91 before I got back to the park. So it was 6 miles off at that point. And my rear brake is just not good. So I roll in it because I was on a really big high when I was coming into that. And then those last couple of miles, it was like literally 40 minutes to get those last 3 miles into the park. And I rode into the park, and Joe's there ready to do like a hot swap of stuff. And I was like, this one's going to take a little longer. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, my bike's broken. Fix it. I just sat down on the chair. He's like, what's wrong with it? I'm like, you need to check the rear brake. So Joe has my wheel off, my brakes off, my brake pads out, and he brings my brake pads over. He's like, what the heck did you do to these things? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I've never seen this before. The little spring that separates your brake pads. So when on a mountain bike, you have the pistons that go in that push your brake pads in against the rotor, and then there's a little spring that pulls them back out when you let off of your brakes. Well, that spring on mine just exploded. I think I'd worn through a whole set of brake pads during the day because, again, this is really steep up and down. And so the rear pad got so thin, and then something must have got up, a piece of sand or something got up in there, and it just like ripped my pad out from that spring. So I was stopped at the park for 40 minutes. 60 degrees, I was soaking wet. It was good, perfect weather, but now I started to get cold. Luckily, I had another kit in my bag, so I just went over the edge of the park and stripped naked and put my kit on. There's like a million people in the park. I didn't care. And I just I was eating. I had another Coke and another ginger ale and more cookies and more of this and more of that. And meanwhile, Joe's got his headlamp on, and he's back and forth to Matt's car, and he's talking with Wendy, and they're trying to find another set of brake pads. And we went and got my toolkit. He got his. I literally had everything you could possibly imagine for fixing a bike, except for a new set of brake pads. Like, who would think to bring a new set of brake pads? So note to self. So by the end, he's like, all right, we have two choices. We can just leave your brake pads out and you got no brake. Or we can put this back in. It'll probably work to stop you, but it might rub for the rest of the day. And I'm like, all right, well, I need brakes. So let's put them back in. I took a roll of electric tape, and the right Allen wrench I kept out in one of my frame bags. And I was like, if this starts rubbing, I'm just going to take the brake off and tape it to the side of my frame and just have no rear brake for the hardest, gnarliest mountain bike trails I've ever ridden. But that was my plan.
Okay. Right? It is a plan. I mean, a plan is good. Okay.
So I took off, and it was a little bit frustrating to just sit there in the chair and watch rider after rider after rider after rider go past me as I'm sitting there, and Joe's like working on my bike. It's like the NASCAR race when something is really broken and you have to take the car to the back. That's Joe, like, being the hero fixing my bike. So I made it probably 3 miles, and I decided I'm only going to use my front brake. You knew about this from Leadville. You had a similar problem. I'm only going to use my front brake. And then I was going down this one really gnarly section, and I was like, I have to use my brake. I can't not use my both brakes because otherwise I'm going to die, and I don't really want to die. This is kind of a race, and I don't want to prove my wife right, so I have to like not die. And so I hit my brakes, and they stopped me, and as soon as it leveled out for the second at the bottom, they started going, we're making all this noise again, and I'm like, I still have 4 or 5, I don't know how many hours to go still, and my brakes rubbing again. And so I rubbed for, I don't know, a while, but then I eventually kind of had a detente with my brakes. We came to a little agreement where if I used them really strong, like a really strong brake and almost completely stopped myself, and then took about 10 seconds to feather it back open again, for some way that brake pad would like loosen itself back up and it didn't rub anymore. So the last 2.5 hours, it didn't rub a single time, as long as I only used it when necessary and I specifically feathered it back out afterwards, and I was fine. So
Okay.
that was when the race started to get fun for me, because I knew I only had a couple hours left. I'm at like a mile 100 or so. And that's when, anytime I saw somebody up ahead with a headlamp, within 2 minutes I passed them, and within 30 seconds they were gone. I couldn't see them again. I must have passed 50 people in the last 2 hours. I learned later that those were a lot of the 50 milers that were just suffering and finishing. So these 50 milers took 18 to 19 hours to finish. Those were the people I was passing at the end of my 110 mile race. And again, it was a lot of the stuff that they just weren't comfortable riding. And I rode more things in the last 2 hours than I rode the whole day, because all of there were places where you have a flattish section with a bunch of roots and rocks, and then a steep uphill switchback that was sandy and rocky. And it was like impossible for me to ride. Even if I wanted to ride it, I just couldn't, because you just couldn't get any traction. So you get off your bike, you'd push it the 5 feet to the top of that tight switchback, but with your light, you can only see 20, 25 feet out there. So it's like, all right, I'm going to get back on my bike. You pedal for 6 pedal strokes, and then you're at another stupid switchback, and you're like, get back off your bike. And you're like, on and off your bike, you start to chafe just getting on and off and trying to get moving. And so you do like 2 or 3 of those, and then finally you're like, well, I'm just going to push my bike to the next one. And you push and you're around the corner, and then there's no turn. So you get back on your bike, and then you're 5 pedal strokes, and you're like, oh, now here's the turn. And so it was just like this constant frustration of like, I don't really want to get off my bike, but I have to get off my bike. But I don't want to get off my bike, but I have to get off my bike. And it's just like over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
And so there were 3 tokens you collected along the way. And by tokens, there's a big sign that says checkpoint up ahead, and they have this plastic pumpkin, and they have a bunch of wooden tokens in them. So there were 5 or 6 of those that were fake. So you stop, and there's like no token, and I'm like, well, now what? I guess I keep moving. And it's like, again, these mind games are they always put them right over the place where you need some momentum. They put it there, so you have to stop. Or there's a really steep downhill thing where you have lots of runway on the other side of it. They put it like right at the bottom of that hill, and it's just like you have to stop and go back for a fake checkpoint. It's like, oh, okay, this is what they're doing to me. I'm not gonna let them get me. I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
And so yeah, it was just more of that gnarly stuff, and I mean, yeah, that's where it was. So when I finished, it was 3:30 in the morning. I had gone through 2.5 bar lights. I had them at a higher setting than I normally ride at, because I knew I had enough lights to use them all. I might as well have extra visibility, and went through 2 helmet lights. And when I finished, I felt great. It sounds so weird, but I like rolled in at 3:30 in the morning into the little roadway where the finish line is, and there were like 10 people standing around, like total buzzkill, like nothing big. It's like an Ironman finish. There's all this noise and people.
Sure.
3:30 in the morning in the middle of town, it was like the backup race director and the one person doing the timing stuff, and Joe was there, and Matt was there, and Wendy was there, and that was it. You like pull your tokens out. You're desperately hoping that you have all of the ones that you need. They check them. They hand you this stupid little wooden token that says you're a finisher, and that's it. Like, that's all you get. You get a green sticker that you go put on your number in the big truck, and that half the stickers are red that they DNF'd, and then there's some green ones there, and that's it. It's like, oh, well, now what? It's 3:30 in the morning. I'm wired. You get a couple of slices of pizza. We drove back to the VRBO, and you're caked with dirt. So then you showered and clean out the tub, because it's the VRBO and you don't want to leave it a mess. It was 4:45 by the time I went to sleep. And I woke up at 9:15, and it's like, oh, I need to pack my stuff into my truck so I can drive back 7 hours to Minnesota. And it's like, it was just that part was exhausting because I normally get 8 hours sleep every night and like only sleeping 4 hours after. I mean, just imagine sitting on a couch for 20 hours straight, how hard that would be.
Oh,
So like riding a bike is different, but also hard. So there you go. There's my story.
unbelievable. The people who know John know that everybody's a red sticker on a day like that. That's wild. Like, just to hear you talk about the terrain, having ridden with you and seen you handle what I consider to be challenging terrain, just like it's not even there. To have you say like that's hard and technical means that's just like next level. Like it's like a double black diamond, but like off the side of that because the double black diamond was kind of organized. Like that's just unbelievable to me. That's crazy.
Yeah,
so
to be clear, I wasn't unsafe. The whole day
Right.
felt safe. It was just more difficult
Hmm.
because even when you're just riding a lot of like rocks that are the size of, like a softball size rocks, but there's 1,000 of them, it's just not fun.
Yeah.
And it's
Why
hard.
not? Just
And if
take
you don't have really good balance, it's just hard.
Right. But I think also like the fatigue and the darkness, right? So like what's not dangerous, but like when you're exhausted and you're tired and you're like the parts of you that normally get a rest when you're on a flat road for, I don't know, half an hour,
Yeah,
they
none of
just
that.
start to all fatigue on you. Yeah, just the relentlessness of it seems crazy. So I guess, we talked a little bit about the equipment. Like I'd be curious for you, like if you were to go do it again, now you know what you know, like would you obviously except for bringing a brake pad, what would you do differently? Like what's the takeaway from this that you're like, I think
Well, I will
be
answer
a
that
better
before.
road?
Let me answer a question that you didn't ask. When I finished Leadville, immediately I'm like, oh, I can do faster next year. Oh, I want to go back. Let's get back here. When you finish Ironman, you want to go back. Even as miserable as Kona is, when you finish it, you're like, you need to go back
I
there.
know I can do
Sometimes that
better.
takes a month to get there, but I finished this race and I'm like, I checked that box.
I'm all set.
I'm good. Now, if one of my buddies wanted to go, I would either crew for them or I probably would go back and
Okay.
do it. But
Mhm.
so what would I do differently? I probably won't.
Mhm.
Maybe, or at least not for a while, unless there's circumstances that force me back there. And I would do it again. It was fun. But my equipment was spot on. I had inserts in my tires. I ran a little bit higher tire pressure. I had the better traction on my tires. I had the exact right bike for it. Obviously, I would take an extra set of brake pads. I would have taken an extra set of everything. I had an extra chain. I had a couple of chain links. I had an extra set of wheels if you needed them. I wasn't sure if you're allowed to change wheels or not, but I figured just in case I would finish and DNF myself, but I was finishing the stupid course if I had to. And I didn't need any of that stuff. I had all kind of tools, all of these things. I had 40 bars to eat, different varieties of it. I had 4 of them over 20 hours. So I just ate everything else. So I wouldn't have changed anything. And frankly, my preparation was good. I think I lost fitness this year. Top end. I did a lot of long, slow riding. I did a couple 12-hour rides where I started in the afternoon and I went into the middle of the night because I needed to test my light. I needed to test durability. I needed to build up the positional fitness. It probably wasn't the best for racing, John, but it was fun for face a challenge and complete it, John. So I'm glad that I did it. Again, a downcountry bike is perfect for that. Inserts in the tires, better traction. All of those things are good. But frankly, I probably could have done that on a trail bike. I could have done it on an XC bike. It didn't really matter because my mind was in the right spot for that event. And I didn't have race hat on where I have a switch, race hat and at Leadville, I have race hat on. At Ironman, I have race hat on. No matter what, Lutsen, I'm always racing. But this was kind of like, I'm enjoying this stupid, crazy, weird adventure, and I kind of liked it. But that doesn't mean I liked it enough to say I want to do it again next year.
Right. Well, listen, I mean, you smashed it. Like, I think when we talk about execution, like Race Day is about execution on fitness. I think execution mattered even more here, just given your ups and downs, like the problems you had to solve, like just not being able to eat, getting 4 hours in and being like, I haven't eaten anything, not because I'm distracted, but because literally I can't possibly eat, and then adapting to that, the mental side of just saying like, this is a game. And they're just, I'm passing these tests, like just great insight as to how ordinary people tackle really hard things, with the right, obviously good preparation.
Well, to be clear, I'm extraordinary, not ordinary, but I
so sorry. I tried to sleep that in there. Your radar picked that right up. I might have gotten that in at 3:47 in the morning.
Probably, yeah, that would have worked.
But there's no other time. Well, fantastic. I mean, kudos to you. I'm constantly amazed at how you continue to find things to challenge yourself, and like I said, raise the bar for the team. This is no different. I'll put the links up, everything. I'll put a link up to your Strava so people can kind of live vicariously through you.
It was 14,000 feet of gain. So Strava says it was my highest gain ride ever, and I've done some pretty long and big rides, so that was fun.
That's crazy.
If anybody wants to do this race, it sells out in 60 seconds. Usually mid-October, October 13th, they open sign up, and within 60 seconds, it's filled. So you really need intentional about signing up.
All right, I'll make sure this episode gets out before then with the links. I did see that when I pulled up the website before when I was showing it to you. I was like, yikes.
It's either October 13th or it'll be Halloween. It's some weird day at some weird time.
Somewhere in there.
But very cool. They're cool dudes. It's a great vibe. I can't say enough things about the vibe, the organizers, the community. Like, it was really a type of race that the experience was awesome, even though it was
the experience. Yeah, 10 out of 10 for the experience.
Yes.
That's awesome. I think sometimes you come away from it and you're like, everything was great, but you went like, 1 minute over the time that you wanted or needed versus 1 minute under. And like that criterion changes everything else around you. It sounds like you organized the day so that everything was awesome. And that part about the over under just didn't even matter.
Yeah. I guess that'd be between 17 and 21 hours. So I was in my window.
Dear God. Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Well, I hope that when you decide to smack Joe back, that's captured on video at least, because that'd be pretty funny. And happy recovery to you as you go forward. And please don't invite me for another adventure like that. But if you've got anything ordinary you're doing, like a training day, I'm down for it next year for sure.
Sounds good. Well, thanks a lot. It's great to talk to you. And
same.
We'll do it again in the future with some other stupid Withrow trick.
Oh my God. I can only imagine.
Endurance Nation.
Hey, podcast fans. I know you love the podcast because here you are, you're listening to it and you're still listening to me talk right now. Did you know you can get content just like this in your inbox once a month? We send out a great newsletter. We call it, guess what? The Unfair Advantage. That's right. It's our information to you, something that separates you from the competition. If they're not here, then they don't know. But if you are here, then now you do. Zero excuses. If you go check us out online at endurancenation.us/newsletter, it's your opportunity to enter your email address, sign up for these updates. They come once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on my race schedule. And it's your chance to get insider information that's going to help you become a better, smarter athlete. Don't miss out on this chance to get ahead of the competition. It doesn't cost you any money, and it's not a ton of work. It's just your email address. That's endurancenation.us/newsletter.
For more information about Endurance Nation, visit us online at endurancenation.us. The provided music is from the Podshow Podsafe Music Network. Check it out at music.podshow.com.